It was my birthday, and I woke up to the soft glow of morning sunlight streaming through the curtains. The air was crisp, and the faint sound of birds chirping outside made everything feel peaceful. I stretched lazily, expecting the usual birthday routine. Maybe breakfast in bed, a thoughtful gift, and a quiet dinner with my husband, Ryan. Ryan and I had been married for 5 years, and though our love was strong, I sometimes missed the passion and excitement of our early days. Life had settled into a comfortable routine, and while I was happy, a part of me longed for something more thrilling, something unexpected. As I turned over in bed, I felt Ryan's warm body beside me. He was already awake, watching me with a soft smile on his lips. His fingers traced gentle circles on my arm, sending small shivers down my spine. "Happy birthday, baby," he murmured, leaning in to press a kiss against my forehead. I smiled sleepily. Thank you." His lips trailed down to my cheek, then my jaw, before he whispered in my ear, "I have something special planned for you tonight." I opened my eyes fully, curiosity sparking inside me. "Oh? What is it?" He smirked, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "You'll see." I raised an eyebrow. Ryan had never been one for surprises. He usually told me in advance what he had planned, whether it was a dinner reservation or a weekend getaway. But this time, he was being secretive, and I couldn't deny that it excited me. "Should I be nervous?" I teased, running a hand down his chest. He chuckled, his deep voice vibrating against my skin. "Just trust me." That was the thing about Ryan. I did trust him completely. He had always been a loving, dependable husband, and though we had our ups and downs, he never let me down when it truly mattered. As I got out of bed, I noticed his phone buzzing on the nightstand. He glanced at it quickly before silencing the screen, his expression unreadable. "Who was that?" I asked casually, stretching my arms. "Just Jake," he replied, a small smile playing on his lips. Jake. Ryan's best friend. They had been inseparable since college, and though I had always liked Jake, I couldn't ignore the way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. There was something in his gaze, something intense, something that made my skin tingle. I grabbed my robe and headed to the bathroom, my mind still lingering on Ryan's words. What could he possibly be planning? And why was Jake involved? The warm water cascaded over my body in the shower, I thought back to the way Jake had always been a part of our lives. He was charming, confident, and effortlessly attractive. There had been moments, fleeting, stolen glances, that made me wonder if he had ever thought of me as more than just his best friend's wife, but I never dared entertain the thought for too long. I shook my head, pushing the idea aside. Tonight was about Ryan and me. A birthday surprise planned by my husband. Nothing more, nothing less. The day passed in a blur of phone calls and birthday messages from friends and family. My best friend took me out for lunch, showering me with compliments on my outfit and teasing me about Ryan's mysterious surprise. "You're glowing today," she said, stirring her iced coffee. "Is it the birthday excitement, or is Ryan planning something extra special?" I laughed, sipping my drink. "I have no idea. He's being so secretive about it." "That's a good thing," she winked. "Maybe he's finally bringing back the excitement." Her words stayed with me for the rest of the afternoon. As much as I adored Ryan, I knew our relationship had become predictable. Was this his way of changing that? When I returned home, the house was empty. A note on the kitchen counter caught my attention. "Wear something sexy and be ready by 8 p.m. Heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that sent a thrill through me. I traced my fingers over the handwriting, anticipation curling in my stomach. Ryan had never left a note like this before. What was he up to? And why did I feel like tonight would change everything? After reading Ryan's note, I felt a rush of excitement and curiosity. It wasn't like him to be this mysterious, and that only made me more eager for what was to come. Wear something sexy and be ready by 8 p.m. His words replayed in my mind, sending a warm thrill through my body. I glanced at the clock. There were only a couple of hours left before I had to be ready. That gave me just enough time to shower again, do my hair, and pick out the perfect outfit. As I stepped into the warm water, my thoughts drifted back to Ryan's behavior. He had been so secretive all day, and now Jake was involved too. Why did... I get the feeling that this wasn't just a simple dinner date. Jake had always been a close friend of ours, but lately, I had sensed something different about the way he looked at me. His gaze lingered a little too long, his compliments felt heavier, and sometimes, when Ryan wasn't paying attention, I swore I saw something deeper in his eyes, something forbidden. I shook my head, trying to push those thoughts aside. It's just a birthday surprise. Don't overthink it. After my shower, I stood in front of my closet, running my fingers over the dresses hanging inside. If Ryan wanted sexy, I was going to give him exactly that. I finally settled on a red silk dress that hugged my curves perfectly, the neckline dipping just enough to be alluring but still classy. I paired it with delicate heels and styled my hair in soft waves, letting them cascade over my shoulders. As I applied my final touch of lipstick, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. Ryan, be ready. The car is on its way to pick you up. Car? That was unexpected. Normally, Ryan would drive us wherever we were going, but tonight, everything was different. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. My heart pounded as I grabbed my clutch and walked to the door. When I opened it, I was met with a familiar face. Jake. He stood there, leaning casually against the doorframe, his dark suit perfectly tailored to his tall, muscular frame. His green eyes flickered with something unreadable as they roamed over me. Wow, he murmured, a slow smirk curving his lips. You look breathtaking. Heat rushed to my cheeks at the way he said it. His voice was low, almost intimate. Thank you, I said, my voice softer than I intended. Where's Ryan? Jake extended his hand as if inviting me to step closer. Waiting for us. Come on, birthday girl. The way he said it sent a strange shiver down my spine, one that had nothing to do with the cool evening air. I hesitated for only a second before slipping my hand into his. His grip was firm, warm, and I felt a sudden awareness of just how close we were. As we walked toward the sleek black car parked outside, Jake opened the door for me, his fingers grazing my lower back as I slid inside. That simple touch made my skin tingle. He got in beside me, and the driver pulled away from the house. The car was dimly lit, the city lights flickering through the windows as we moved. So, I said, trying to break the silence. Are you part of this whole surprise? Jake turned slightly, his gaze locking onto mine. You could say that? His answer was vague, teasing. I narrowed my eyes playfully. And you're not going to give me any hints? He chuckled, shaking his head. Nope, but I will say this. You're in for a night you won't forget. His voice carried a weight that made my breath hitch. I wasn't sure if it was the way he was looking at me or the way he said it, but suddenly, the anticipation in my stomach doubled. I turned my attention to the city outside, trying to focus on anything but the growing tension between us. But even then, I could feel Jake's eyes on me, watching. After what felt like forever, the car finally pulled up to a luxurious private lounge. The place was elegant, with soft golden lights illuminating the entrance. My heartbeat quickened. Jake stepped out first, then extended his hand to help me. Ready? I nodded, slipping my fingers into his. As I stepped inside, my eyes immediately searched for Ryan. I spotted him across the room, standing near a table set for 3. A bottle of champagne chilled in an ice bucket, and the entire setting felt intimate, almost seductive. Ryan's gaze darkened as he took me in, a slow smile spreading across his face. He walked up to me, sliding an arm around my waist. "You look stunning," he murmured, pressing a kiss against my cheek. Then, glancing at Jake, he added, "I see he took good care of you." Jake smirked. "Of course." Something about the way they exchanged looks made my stomach flip. Tonight was going to be different, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what was about to happen. As Ryan's arm rested around my waist, I could feel the warmth of his body through the thin fabric of my dress. His grip was firm, possessive, yet gentle, as if he was both protecting and claiming me at the same time. I looked up at him, my heart pounding, but before I could speak, his lips brushed against my ear. "Happy birthday, baby," he whispered, his voice thick with something I couldn't quite place. I shivered, caught between excitement and curiosity. Jake stood beside us, watching with an unreadable expression. I had always known him as Ryan's best friend, but tonight, something felt different. The energy between the three of us was charged, like an invisible tension neither of them wanted to acknowledge just yet. I turned my attention to the restaurant, or rather, the private lounge we had just entered. It wasn't a place I had ever been to before. The lighting was dim, casting soft golden hues over the dark wooden floors. The space was intimate, with only a few secluded booths and velvet-lined seats arranged around low tables. A subtle scent of vanilla and warm spices lingered in the air, wrapping around me like a promise of something indulgent. Ryan led me toward a reserved table at the far end of the lounge. It was set for 3, and a bottle of champagne rested in an ice bucket. Condensation dripping down the sides, delicate candlelight flickered between us, casting shadows that danced across Jake's sharp jawline. As we sat down, Jake reached for the champagne, effortlessly popping the cork. A soft pop echoed through the quiet space, making me jump slightly. He chuckled, pouring the bubbly liquid into 3 crystal glasses. "To the birthday girl," Jake said, raising his glass. Ryan's eyes met mine as he lifted his own. "To my beautiful wife. May this night be unforgettable." The way he said it sent a rush of warmth through me. I clinked my glass against theirs, the sound ringing softly in the intimate space. I took a sip, the cool bubbles tickling my lips. "Okay," I finally said, glancing between the two of them. "Are you going to tell me what this is all about?" Ryan smirked, leaning back against his chair. "Patience, love. Just enjoy the night." I narrowed my eyes playfully. "You've never been one for surprises before. What's changed?" Jake chuckled, swirling his glass. "Maybe we wanted to do something different this year." His words sent a strange thrill down my spine. As the evening unfolded, we enjoyed a luxurious dinner, perfectly seared steak, buttery lobster, and decadent chocolate mousse for dessert. But even as we ate, I couldn't ignore the way Ryan and Jake kept exchanging glances, as if they shared some private joke I wasn't in on. After the last sip of wine, Ryan reached across the table, his fingers grazing my hand. "Come dance. With me." I smiled, setting my glass down. "Here? Why not?" he murmured, his thumb stroking my wrist. The music changed, as if on cue, to something slow and sensual. Ryan pulled me to my feet, leading me to a small space near the corner where the lights were even dimmer. As his hands slid around my waist, I melted against him, swaying to the rhythm. His breath was warm against my neck, his lips grazing my skin just enough to send shivers through me. "You're beautiful tonight," he whispered. I tilted my head up to meet his gaze. "You keep saying that. Should I be worried?" He chuckled, brushing his nose against mine. "No, just let yourself enjoy the moment." I sighed into him, letting my body relax. But then I felt another presence behind me. Jake. He stood close, watching us. His gaze was dark, intense, his lips slightly parted as if he was debating whether to speak. Ryan must have noticed because he turned his head slightly. "You've always admired her, haven't you?" Jake didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened, his fingers flexing at his sides. Then, after a moment, he exhaled. "You already know the answer to that." My breath caught. Ryan's grip on my waist tightened just slightly. "Then maybe it's time we stop pretending." The world seemed to tilt slightly. I swallowed, my pulse quickening. Was this part of the surprise? Because if it was, I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. The air around us grew heavier, thick with something unspoken. My body was already pressed against Ryan's as we swayed to the slow rhythm of the music. But now, with Jake standing so close, the tension between the three of us became undeniable. Ryan's hands slid lower down my back, his touch lingering. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he murmured, his lips grazing my ear. I shivered, barely managing to nod. My heart was racing, but not from nerves. This was something else. Something thrilling. Jake hadn't moved away. If anything, he had stepped closer, his presence a quiet yet powerful force. The heat of his gaze on me was almost as intense as Ryan's touch. I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering. Ryan turned me slightly in his arms so that I was now facing Jake. My husband's grip didn't loosen, but his expression had changed. There was a look in his eyes I hadn't seen before. A knowing smirk, a glint of mischief. "She looks incredible tonight, doesn't she?" Ryan asked Jake, his voice low, teasing. Jake's green eyes flickered over me, his gaze moving from my lips down the curve of my dress. He exhaled, his jaw tightening. "Yeah," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "She does." A wave of heat rushed through me. This was new. This was dangerous. Ryan tilted his head, watching me carefully, as if waiting to see how I would react. His thumb brushed against my lower back, grounding me. "I told you I had something special planned for your birthday," he whispered. "Do you trust me?" I met his gaze. My husband, my love, the man I had spent years with, he knew me better than anyone. And right now his eyes were filled with nothing but desire and adoration. I nodded. "I trust you." His smirk deepened. "Good." Before I could process what was happening, Ryan stepped aside slightly, leaving the space between Jake and me open. Jake hesitated for only a second before he reached out, his fingers barely grazing my wrist. His touch was light, almost testing, but it sent a jolt through me. "You don't have to," he said quietly, his eyes searching mine. I wasn't sure if he was speaking to me or to Ryan, but it didn't matter. I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I inhaled sharply, my body still humming from the warmth of Ryan's touch, the intensity of Jake's presence. The music played on, slow and sensual, wrapping around us like silk. Jake took another step forward, his hand sliding gently to my waist. His touch was different from Ryan's, softer, more hesitant, but just as electrifying. Ryan watched, his expression unreadable, but he didn't stop him. Instead, he leaned in, whispering, "Let go. Just feel." And so I did. I let myself sink into the moment, let the heat of the room seep into my skin. Jake's grip grew firmer as we swayed, his body warm against mine. His scent, woodsy, rich, so different from Ryan's, surrounded me, making my head spin. Ryan stepped behind me again, his hands sliding up my arms, his breath hot against my neck. "You like this, don't you?" he murmured. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my heart pounding. Jake's fingers traced slow circles against my waist, his touch lingering, almost testing boundaries neither of us had ever dared to cross. Ryan's lips brushed my ear again. Maybe we should thank him properly. I swallowed, my breath hitching. Jake's eyes darkened at Ryan's words, his fingers tightening on me ever so slightly. The room felt smaller, hotter. Every sound, every movement felt amplified. And in that moment, I realized tonight was going to change everything. My breath came in short, uneven waves. My body caught between the heat of Ryan behind me and the intensity of Jake in front of me. The air was thick with anticipation, every moment stretching into something deeper, something I had never felt before. Ryan's hands trailed slowly down my arms, his touch familiar yet electrifying in this new context. "You're trembling," he whispered into my ear, his voice full of knowing amusement. Is it excitement or nerves? I swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. Maybe it was both. Jake, standing so close, his green eyes locked onto mine, tilted, his head slightly. "You can tell us to stop anytime," he said softly. "But if you don't—" He trailed off, his voice carrying a weight that sent a fresh shiver through me. I turned my head slightly, looking back at Ryan. His gaze held nothing but warmth, trust, and desire. "Is this really happening?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the soft hum of the music. Ryan smirked, brushing a slow kiss against my shoulder. "Only if you want it to." I exhaled shakily, my fingers instinctively gripping Jake's shirt. My mind was spinning, but my body had already made its decision. Ryan chuckled, sensing my surrender. "That's my girl," he murmured. Jake's hands, warm and steady, rested on my waist. The touch was hesitant at first, but when I didn't, pull away. His grip tightened slightly, drawing me closer. My heart raced. I had always known Jake as Ryan's best friend, the man who had been there through our ups and downs, who had always looked at me a second too long when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Now, with his hands on me, the tension that had simmered for years ignited into something undeniable. Ryan watched us, his expression unreadable, but the approval in his gaze made my pulse quicken. He wanted this, wanted me to experience this. Jake's fingers traced slow, deliberate circles against the fabric of my dress. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his voice thick with something raw. Heat pooled in my stomach at his words. The way he said it, like he had been holding it back for years, sent a fresh wave of desire through me. Ryan leaned in again, his lips brushing against the shell of my ear. "I think he's wanted you for a long time," he mused, his voice teasing but laced with truth. Jake didn't deny it. Instead, he let out a soft exhale, his forehead resting against mine for just a second before he pulled back, his restraint hanging by a thread. Ryan's hands moved from my arms down to my hips, his grip firm. "Do you trust me?" I turned my head, looking up at him, the man I loved, the man I had married, offering me something new, something dangerous, something that might change everything. I nodded. "Yes." Ryan smiled, pressing a lingering kiss to my lips before pulling away just enough to whisper, "Then let's give you a birthday you'll never forget." And in that moment I knew. There was no turning back. The air was thick with desire, every breath I took filled with anticipation. My body was on fire, caught between Ryan's familiar touch and Jake's lingering presence. The weight of what was happening pressed down on me. Yet I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt exhilarated. Ryan's fingers traced lazy patterns on my waist as he whispered, "Relax, baby. Just feel." Jake's hands remained steady at my sides, his grip firm yet hesitant, as if he was waiting for permission. His green eyes, usually filled with playful mischief, now burned with something deeper, something raw. I swallowed hard, my lips parting, but I couldn't find the words to speak. My body had already made its decision, betraying me with every shiver, every quickened breath. Ryan chuckled, his lips ghosting over my ear. I knew you'd love this, he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to the sensitive spot just beneath my jaw. I closed my eyes, leaning into him, but the moment I did, Jake's fingers flexed against my hips, his warmth grounding me in the reality of what was unfolding. This wasn't a fantasy. This was real. I opened my eyes, meeting Jake's gaze. The way he looked at me, like he was barely holding himself back, sent a fresh wave of heat through me. Ryan, sensing my surrender, smirked. You've thought about this before, haven't you? My breath hitched. I had. Maybe not in so many words, but I had felt the tension between us before. The way Jake's eyes lingered a little too long, the way his compliments carried a weight. They shouldn't have. The way my body always reacted when he was near. Jake exhaled sharply, his fingers brushing against the fabric of my dress. We don't have to do this, he said, his voice low, strained, but the way he said it told me he wanted to. Ryan's hands tightened on me. No, he agreed, his lips grazing my shoulder. We don't. He paused before adding, but she wants to. I did. I wanted to know what it would feel like. I tilted my chin up, searching Ryan's face for reassurance. His dark eyes held nothing but confidence. You're mine, he reminded me, brushing his lips against mine in a slow, possessive kiss. No matter what happens tonight. Jake inhaled deeply, his fingers twitching against my skin as he watched us. When Ryan pulled away, he turned me slightly, positioning me so that I was facing Jake again. My pulse thundered in my ears as Jake hesitated, his hands still hovering as if unsure whether to pull me closer. I made the choice for him. I stepped forward. A slow, sharp breath left Jake's lips as his hands finally, fully, gripped my waist. His touch was different from Ryan's, less practiced, more hesitant, but just as electrifying. Ryan's voice was smooth, teasing. I told you she'd want this. Jake swallowed hard, his grip tightening. His words died on his tongue as his eyes met mine again. Something inside me shifted. The last bit of restraint snapped, and just like that, the line we had never dared to cross disappeared. The air was thick with warmth, a steady hum of energy wrapping around us like silk. My heart pounded as I stood between Ryan and Jake, the weight of the moment pressing down on me in the most intoxicating way. Ryan's hands traced soft, familiar circles against my back, grounding me in the love and security we had always shared. But in front of me, Jake's presence was something new, something thrilling. His green eyes flickered with a mix of hesitation and desire, a silent question. Lingering between us, was this real? Was this truly happening? I exhaled, my body answering before my mind could. I let myself be in the moment, to feel, to experience, to give in. Ryan's voice was soft, teasing. You're shaking, baby. His lips brushed against my temple, the touch sending warmth rushing through me. Do you want to stop? I shook my head. No. Jake's fingers twitched at his sides before he finally lifted a hand, tracing a slow, reverent path down my arm. His touch was different from Ryan's, softer, almost uncertain, but it sent the same shivers through me, igniting something deep, in my core. You're beautiful, Jake murmured, his voice thick. Ryan chuckled. I've been telling her that all night. A slow, heated blush crept up my neck as my husband pulled me closer, his familiar scent wrapping around me. I told you, baby, he whispered, his breath warm against my skin. Tonight is about you. I turned my head slightly, my gaze shifting between them. This moment was unlike anything I had ever imagined. There was no jealousy in Ryan's eyes, no hesitation in Jake's touch, just an unspoken understanding that tonight, we were letting go of boundaries. Jake swallowed hard, his fingers tightening ever so slightly on my waist. "I don't want to do anything you'll regret," he admitted, his voice low. Ryan smirked. "She won't." And I knew, deep in my bones, that he was right. Because this wasn't just about desire. This was about trust, about stepping into something new, something thrilling, something I never knew I wanted until now. I let out a breath. I hadn't realized I was holding, and as the night stretched before us, I knew one thing for certain. This birthday would be one I would never forget.